was rather a surprise. There were a few bills that were passed at the very end of the legislature with little or no opportunity for public input and without much notice to many of the entities. This happened not right at the end of the legislature in the last waning days, but it was close to the end. And I don't know if Chief Nelson has anything to add, but I don't believe law enforcement was consulted in any particular way on the bill. At least that's my understanding.
Remarkable. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Weber. Mr. Nelson? Chief Nelson? Something to add, sir?
President Sandy, members of the committee, that is correct. We have lobbyists that work for us that track all the bills. We have the North Dakota Chiefs Association, the North Dakota Sheriff's Association, and this was a comprehensive package which won't affect municipal court, but there was a lot of stuff that came in, a lot of laws that came in at the tail end of the session relevant to possession of controlled substances, and the tendency was to lower penalty phases for all narcotics across the board. However, the one that will directly affect us, as Mr. Swanson said, is the possession of marijuana. So before that says, okay, this goes into municipal court or district court. Now an officer stops you if it's one joint or 100 pounds, it still goes into municipal court as a misdemeanor versus going up to a felony. So in its simplest forms, that basically is what it's done for us.
I guess I would just add one thing, and what we've kind of missed is without the intent to deliver. If law enforcement can prove that they were selling the narcotics or selling the drugs or marijuana, that brings it back up to a felony. Yeah, but other than that, personal use is...
And Mr. Weigel's correct. One is the intent to deliver, and the second one is that is for a first offense for the possession of the other controlled substances, but on second or subsequent offenses it would revert back to the more severe penalty. But they're basically, it seemed like the philosophy was lowering first-time offenses almost across the board.
We know, did the North Dakota League of Cities go along with this, or were they...
I don't know that the North Dakota League of Cities was aware of it, to be honest with you, because in dealing with Mr. Crosby and that whole group, it was never once discussed. And like I said, even our professional organizations were not tracking it on our radar whatsoever.
Mr. Swanson or Chief, if these are Class B misdemeanors, what are the penalties for Class B misdemeanors?
I'm going to shoot
fines or
potential fines and potential jail time. When available. So under your scenario, the officer is going to make a choice, either cite them into district court or not cite them at all, because municipal court, without a change in ordinance, would not have jurisdiction.
And if they're cited into district court, there's no jurisdiction and their hands are tied, is that correct?
No, district court would be able to process it as a Class B misdemeanor. So the district court's jurisdiction is still there, but they can't impose anything more than a Class B misdemeanor.
Mr. Weigel?
I'm going to make a motion to approve reluctantly. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with what the legislature did. I think that having 3 bags of meth on you and it's a misdemeanor for your first time is ridiculous. But like Mr. Swanson and Chief Nelson said, essentially if we don't pass this and you say we're not going to do anything, you could have 3 agencies doing 2 different things. You could have UND and the county sheriff's office that cite primarily into district court cite into that, and so they're going to get a B misdemeanor, whereas a city officer would be citing into municipal court and trying for that higher level offense when no court has jurisdiction. So while I disagree with what they did, this is something we have to do to be uniform, not only with other cities but across the state as well, to make the most sense.
Thank you, Mr. Weigel. There's a motion by Weigel, second by Mock. I do find all sorts of irony in the fact that we're talking about all the opioid addictions and the drug problems going on in our communities, yet we're decreasing the penalties for carrying illicit drugs. I still don't understand our legislature, but
part of the theory that they were operating under was a report by a very large study committee in attempting to address the cost of incarceration and the number of people incarcerated for narcotics offenses, particularly those that were in possession or were users as opposed to those that were distributing. I'm not sure that message got to the people that needed to know about it, such as law enforcement and the like, to get their input. There are different ways the legislature could have handled that concern, such as in sentencing or otherwise, but this was not one that I was made aware of that was being considered, and as you heard Chief Nelson, law enforcement generally was not aware of it. There are a few more. We are just now in our office reviewing a number of bills passed by the legislature, and there are a number of them that came in right at the end without much opportunity for input that potentially have some impacts on the city, and we're evaluating those now.
thank you, Mr. Swanson. Yes, Ms. Ma?
I think it would be almost more concerning to not follow the state on this and have Grand Forks be different, especially for drug-related offenses. Whether or not we're in agreement, that's not really our job. I would be more concerned being different than the rest of the state and the implications that could have on the city.
Yeah, I'm less concerned about being different from other cities in the state, but what I am more concerned about is what does it do to the officers in the field? And what decisions do they have to make at that point? And what decisions they make affect what outcomes can occur in the court. But that I see as a bigger issue. And as Councilmember Weigel said, it could potentially create even incongruities between different or among different law enforcement agencies within the same county.
Any other comments?
I would just say, in the years that I've been into this, and probably the same thing for Chief Nelson, that from what I've seen, if you have 3 pounds of marijuana, that's not personal use. I mean, odds are that person's going to have scales, they're going to have bags, they're going to have everything else they need to sell that narcotic. You know, I think this really directly impacts the lower amounts, the half ounce, the things that weren't felonies to begin with. But typically, if you have a couple ounces of marijuana or you have a pound of marijuana, you're not personally using that. You're delivering that to other people within the community, and we still have laws on the books to deal with that, with the more serious offense. So
I would concur with that this is strictly related to possession and not as far as with intent to deliver or distribution. Those offenses go into district court off the bat. Municipal court does not have jurisdiction over those offenses. So,
Ms. Marshall?
This is ironic that we're dealing with this issue, and I'm so disappointed in our legislature that they would do this. And I think that there have been other bills introduced at the last minute that have been snuck by the public, and that is disappointing, and it's counter to what we're trying to do with addictions within our community. However, you know, I think they've boxed us into a corner. I don't know that we have any choice other than to make things more complicated for our law enforcement.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, There's a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Swanson. Item 2.5, CVB bylaw change. Ms. Rigg, good evening.
Good evening. The Convention and Visitors Bureau Board of Directors recently voted to update our